Hello, everyone. Welcome to Faculty Spotlights for the College of Professional Psychology at the Chicago School. Today, we're joined by Dr. Grant Canipe, one of our clinical psychology faculty members in Dallas. Welcome, Dr. Canipe.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to do this.
Awesome. Well, tell us a little bit about what inspired you to enter the field of psychology.
Yeah, I mean, this is a fun one because I don't think I ever intended to do that. I started. I think I was your classic. Like, yeah, I'm going to go to med school. I was pre-med in undergrad, and I did that. I had a double major in biology and chemistry, and I had a minor in psychology, pre-professional psychology. And then I just really got to thinking. It wasn't until I left taking the MCAT that I went, I don't think I'm going to do that.
Yeah.
And I started applying for PhD programs, and I didn't apply for hardly any PhD programs in true psychology. It was all behavioral integrative neuroscience. Neuroscience was my thing. I'd been doing undergraduate research in rodents and looking at hippocampal formation and in development. And I was like, I'm going to do neuroscience. I applied to 4 neuroscience programs and 1 developmental psychology program because it was in my minor of nutrition. At the Nutrition Research Institute. And then I went on that interview and I knew that that's what I wanted to do. And so I went into a developmental psychology PhD program, having never taken developmental psychology before. And I guess you could say 5 years later, I had a PhD in developmental cognitive neuroscience, which still doesn't quite explain how I ended up in psychology. But I was at a research institute and working very closely with the med school at UNC Chapel Hill, and I had been doing some trainings for like clinician training, mostly like MDs and the DOs at the other local university, and went. I started doing some talks with clinical psychologists, like what about the nutrition and other lifestyle factors on mental health? And then I just kind of fell in love with it. Then the pandemic happened. And I met Dr. College Jones, who's now one of the associate deans here, and she was like, "Would you want to teach for a clinical psychology program?" And I was like, "Sure, that sounds great." And I guess to make the already long story a little bit shorter, I ended up joining the faculty of the clinical psychology in Dallas as they opened their new program. And I just feel like it was where I was supposed to be.
Yeah.
So that I never intended to pursue a career in psychology, and then I did anyway.
Yeah, I think a lot of us, when we look back and at we look at where we are now and then look back at the path that led us there, it's really hard to predict.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
somehow we end up where we are, and it almost
yeah,
always seems to be the right place.
absolutely, absolutely.
So, Dr. Knipe, I know you have an extensive research background, and you do a lot of teaching in the program there at
Yeah.
Dallas. Tell us a little bit about what's most gratifying or um, what you enjoy most about teaching and working with students, whether that's in the classroom and instruction or on the research side of
Yeah.
things.
Yeah, I really have found my passion for like academic effectiveness and like developing courses. I would have never guessed how much I enjoyed that. As a second or third year graduate student, after a teaching fellowship and developing some courses and doing that, it really stuck out to me. And now, I chair our academic effectiveness and review committee nationally. And it was just an honor to build our new program in Dallas
Yeah.
in clinical psychology. I had the biggest heavy hand, I guess, in film, and I've taught just about all of the science classes that we offer. Now found the ones that I really like, um, and it's been really great. I think the thing that I enjoy the most, though, if I could put it in one sentence, it's when somebody's looking at you on the front row and they're confused, they don't know quite what's going on, and then you say something, you come up with some new metaphor, and then you just see that like light click on in their eyes, that sparkle in their eye happens, or you just all of a sudden you just showed them some new passion that they didn't know that they liked before,
Yeah.
especially in some of the more difficult courses like my neuroanatomy or my advanced statistics courses where like everybody wants to hate that class. Oh, that's like the hard class. And all of a sudden somebody leaves that class just like, I'm going to be a neuropsychologist. I'm going to go into neuropsych like that. This is so cool. I'm good at this. You can help them find their passion for it. And it makes those difficult days and all of those hours of working and developing, lectures every bit of worth it for those 30 seconds that you see the student like become really passionate. And it motivates you to keep going.
Yeah, that light bulb moment is really gratifying.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm really interested in your answer to this next question because I wonder if it might be a little different than some of our more traditional clinically oriented
Yeah,
faculty.
sure.
But what is one skill or lesson that you hope students take away from the program with you?
Yeah, yeah, and I think you're probably right. Like I imagine the clinically focused faculty will probably say something different.
Hmm.
But I feel like if you ask my students what I would say this to be, they would say that I should ask questions,
Mm.
and that everybody's different. That there's more than one way to approach the problem. And I think that in my courses, in the really sciencey based courses, I'm constantly reminding them that there's more than one theoretical orientation
Yeah,
to how to solve the problem.
yeah,
And so I'm regularly going, no, I want you to apply what we just talked about today. What about this neuroendocrine function might actually be going on in your patient? No, you absolutely don't have an fMRI of them in front of you while you're doing your intake interview. But what do you know about
yeah,
some neuroanatomy or their diet? Ask them about their diet. I mean, I like mea culpa. I will always go to nutrition and exercise physiology. It was my background. But I think I've got my students asking, well, what is it that what other lifestyle factor might be involved here that's not just my general take, like intake interview types of questions. I get them to think a little bit more sciencey, I think.
yeah. It sounds like more holistically as well,
Yeah,
right? That
yeah,
there's a
yeah,
lot that goes into who we are at any given moment, and you can take different roads, different paths, different perspectives to get an answer.
yeah. I had a really great moment last week. I had two students go, well, but the effect size was really low in that study. And I'm just not sure that we should trust its outcomes. It was good. It was statistically significant, but the effect size just wasn't that big. And
Yeah.
that felt like the biggest win of the year when I got people to think about what do the statistics actually tell us.
Yeah, not just whether or not it was significant, but
Right.
what's the meaningful effect of the
Right.
outcome. I love that. So, there are lots of students always looking for opportunities to join a program like the one there in
Yeah.
Dallas or our other
Yeah.
locations. And I know you had kind of a non-traditional path to where you are right now, but what
Yeah.
advice would you share for someone who's looking at entering the field?
Yeah, I think when I'm asked the like, well, so what should I do when I have the opportunity to guest lecture an undergraduate course, or when I'm hanging, doing a little lecture for I got to do a talk for the AP psychology course at the high school recently. They're like, so
Yeah.
what is it that I should do? And I think I'll always come back to like you make your own opportunities. I would have never done like any of the things that I did. I applied to neuroscience programs. I was biochem major and psychology minor. Not psychology, neuroscience. And then I took that risk to have that conversation with somebody to talk about nutrition and developmental psychology. And that was an accident that worked out perfectly. And then I was in an elevator three years later, and somebody that was doing gut microbiome research and was like, I don't know, you have a bunch of older adults you're studying. I don't have an older adult population. I would like to do that. I was like, yeah, I can get us $6,000 to do that. Let's do that. Right. Like everything that I think gets you where you're going happens as a happy accident, and just don't
Yeah.
ever lose track of the random conversation that you might have that might change your life forever. That's the
Yeah.
advice that I always give.
Leverage the opportunities in the present moment. They'll lead you to good
Yeah,
places.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That's a much better way to say that. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I get to listen to it all and then try to bring it down to a
Yeah.
single statement.
Yeah.
But yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
Um, and we'll close with this. Why do you think students would be making a good choice if they chose to study with us?
Yeah, I I think about that question a lot. I was like, why did I choose this faculty position? Why is
Yeah.
this of the different? I could have stayed in a traditional university, Why would I tell a student not to go to a traditional university? What was different about my education versus my students? And I know that all 16 of my dissertation students have me and have me a lot more than I had some of my mentors in a
Yeah, for
way. Like,
sure.
and the focus is on their research. The focus is on their progress. Not to say that I wasn't appreciated at my large R1 institution, but there were a lot of other goals that were part of that education that
Yeah.
wasn't so much student centered. And it was very difficult for a first generation college student in those. And so I think what we do is make it accessible, and we as faculty are accessible, especially when it comes to non-traditional and first generation college students. I feel more at home with many of my students at the Chicago school than I think I ever did at the larger universities that I was part of.
Yeah. I think that's something that we do quite well, right? Is that student-centered focus.
Yeah,
Dr. Knight, thanks so much for spending some time with
yeah,
us today.
absolutely. Thanks for having me.